Hello guys, Crispy here, welcome back to another Sunday video. In this one, my friends, I'm gonna be testing a GeForce RTX 5060, which is an 8GB GPU. Like, seriously, Nvidia? Let me remind you guys of something. 2 years ago, in 2023, the RTX 4060 released, and I, as well as many other reviewers, said that its 8GB of VRAM would become a problem in the near future, and that GPU should have had 12 or at least 10 gigabytes of VRAM. And well, Nvidia had a great opportunity to give us back the 12 gigabytes of VRAM on the 60-tier GPUs that they gave us 4 years ago with the RTX 3060. Yes, because the 3060 for some reason had 12 gigabytes and the 4060 has 8. And the 5060 now has 8 as well. So this is releasing in 2025, and many of the games that I'll try in today's video already need to be scaled down a little bit in terms of texture resolution to accommodate for that pitiful 8GB frame buffer. But moving on from that, let's talk about its specs now and see what improved over the 4060. So the new RTX 5060 is based on the Blackwell architecture. It features 3840 CUDA cores, which is actually a decent improvement over the 4060's 3072. It's 25% improvement. It also features 120 TMUs, 48 ROPs, those 8GB of GDDR7 VRAM, not GDDR6, but again, size matters more. A 128-bit memory bus, which is the same as the 4060. PCI Express 5.0 x 8, which looks very funny here. It's very small on this Gigabyte card, the WindForce 2x. The PCB, in fact, is super short, as you can see here in these shots. And finally, a 145-watt TDP, which is above the 115 watts of the RTX 4060, but it's still pretty much sips power, considering today's standards at least. Finally, it comes in at $299 MSRP, and it can actually be found for MSRP in many places, including here in Portugal, so that's great, I guess, but that doesn't mean you should buy it. Let's play some games on it and see what the RTX 5060 can do in its year of release, 2025. Shall we? And first up we got Cyberpunk 2077. This is looking beautiful at the 1080p resolution using the Ultra settings preset without resolution scaling and without these options right here, just depth of fields and motion blurs. Everything else is set to the Ultra preset, and we're getting 90 to 100 FPS, which is pretty good, especially given that the RTX 4060 under the same scenario here in same settings got around 20 less frames per second, so that's quite a big difference there. Goodbye, Bob! Hey, I bet Bob actually designed this GPU to only give it 8 gigabytes of VRAM. Yeah, he's a demon, by the way, and we all know that 8 gigabytes of VRAM should take no place in a GPU in 2025. That's a big shame. This GPU could have been quite a bit better if it had like 10 or 12 gigabytes in some of the other titles that we'll test here today, and it would give it longevity, right? But with 8 gigs, it's very hard to recommend, even though the performance is actually pretty good, as you can see here. Let's make it a little bit better looking, not by enabling ray tracing, but by enabling DLAA with that new transformer model. This makes the game look so much sharper, but it actually makes it run like an RTX 4060. Obviously, a 4060 with DLAA would also perform a lot slower, into the 50s and 40s. This one is now into the 70s. I'm not sure if it will drop at this point, but the graphics are so much cleaner here using the transformer model in DLAA. I really like this, and I think I would prefer to play the game like this. Let's see if it drops from 60. Ooh, 62 frames there. Okay, we need to get rid of Bob once again. Is my car still there, by the way? Parked? Nope, not really. Goodbye, Bob! Okay, there we go. Beautiful Bob kill right there with a blood streak on the ground. And nice. Apparently, it gets 69 frames per second on average. This is their car, by the way. They haven't noticed. Oh, they noticed now. Anyway, 69 FPS average is very nice indeed, and it doesn't drop from 60 FPS. So the LAA is where it's at, my friends. I would use these settings if I was playing with this GPU as my main card for sure. But what about that ray tracing? Well, let's use the ray tracing ultra preset, which enables everything over here, aside from path tracing, of course. And let's try it with DLSS quality first and ray reconstruction as well. This makes it look a lot better. Let's use like 50% sharpness there on DLSS, and I'll also disable these options, the motion blurs. Okay, here we have it, guys. This is looking really good. I can see that there's a little bit more shimmering here and there because of DLSS quality, especially on the reflections. Is ray reconstruction enabled? No. Okay, so that's why. All right, with this enabled, yeah, definitely looks a lot better. Okay, you know what? If you want to play with some ray tracing, this is pretty decent of an experience. It's still 60 plus all of the time, which is a bit impressive considering it is the ray tracing ultra preset here, and quality DLSS with ray reconstruction looks really good. It's not as sharp obviously as the LAA was previously on ultra settings, but it is arguably sharper than TAA. However, we're seeing a bit of stuttering here and there already, guys. So if you want to use ray tracing, which is very intensive, not only on the core of the GPU, as well as CPU, it's also very intensive on VRAM. And that's what happened there. With those couple of spikes, the VRAM maxed out, it swapped into the RAM. So, yeah, we're not even at full-on 1080p resolution. This is DLSS quality, so it's rendering at 720p and upscaling to 1080p. And we're already running out of VRAM. That is a big shame. If only this card had 10 gigabytes or 12 gigabytes of VRAM, it would have made such a big difference, guys. Oh, but what about some frame generation? I almost forgot about that. Frame gen consumes even more VRAM. This card needed a bit more VRAM even to take advantage of these new technologies like frame generation or multi-frame generation. Like right now, it's actually a really smooth experience. I can't count the 1% lows, by the way, because of how the new frame pacing technology works with these cards. But this is 2 times frame gen. It looks good. It's actually really smooth right now, but that VRAM is filling up quickly. As you can see, it's actually touched 8 gigabytes already. Once we go to Bob's Roundabout, I think we're gonna see exactly the same problems as before, right? Yep, there we go. Stuttering. It's a little bit worse than it was before because now we're adding FG on top of everything. So yeah, from time to time, it will need to use more VRAM, it will swap some things that should be on VRAM to RAM, and it will stutter a bit more. It could have been a buttery smooth experience here with frame generation if only the card had a couple more gigabytes. And if you're wondering, 4 times frame generation consumes about the same VRAM, and it looks like this. 200, almost 200 FPS, 170s, 160s here. But the thing is, yeah, I can see the jittering happening because of that VRAM limitation. Like, it's very apparent right now. Next up is an esports title, Counter-Strike 2. We're playing at 1080p using very high settings with 2 times MSAA. Here we go, guys. Nvidia AWP is being utilized here. You see the stickers there? Hello. Okay. Hello. Goodbye. Goodbye. Let's start counting our FPS. 300s. 100% GPU utilization. Obviously, this game is more CPU bound than GPU bound. So I needed to make things taxing for GPU. That's why we're playing with... Boom! Hello there. What the hell? I thought you went to the other side. Okay. El Castigador got us. All right. But yeah, for this to be a GPU bound scenario, we needed to use very high settings, even though not a lot of people play with very high settings, including myself. I usually play this on low in a CPU bound scenario. He just spawned there. How is that fair? But yeah, it works absolutely flawlessly, obviously, as it should on a 5060. And since it is an esports title, 8GB is actually adequate for these kinds of games. Still not adequate for a 2025 GPU. Ah, that El Castigador again. I want to believe that El Castigador is Bob, and we will get our revenge. Okay, come on, more of you. Wait, wait, it was him. He killed us again. No way. We gotta get this Bobstered. Not him, not him. Is that him? Nope. Come on, come on. Where are they? Where are they? Hello. Too many angles. I preferred this too. Okay. Okay, more. Okay, still didn't get Bob. Is it you, Bob? No. Where'd you come from, you bastard? Come on. Is that you? Yes, we got him! We got him! With 3 seconds remaining, we got El Castillo. We got Bob. Yeah. F you, Bob. Next up is The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered. We're playing at 1080p using DLAA with DLSS 4 and the max settings here aside from motion blur and these pesky little things over here. Okay, so right away we're starting here with 69 FPS. That's a good sign because all we want really is 69 FPS all of the time in all games. If it could do 69 FPS max settings in every game, I would be very happy actually. But there is something that is worrying me a little bit, guys, and that is that VRAM consumption. It's allocating 7.8 gigabytes almost, and I think this might not be enough for very high textures at 1080p resolution. At least when I tested the RTX 4060 in this game, it's also an 8GB GPU, on very high textures in a different scenario to this one, it was struggling quite a bit and dropping a lot of FPS because of the lack of VRAM, and I think in some scenarios at least it will end up happening with this one as well. Actually, let's just test it out here in another area, okay? Closer to 100 frames per second, so much less intensive than that forest area. Little bit of a frame time spike there, but, you know, could be just a one-off. The VRAM... Oh, boy! Okay, no, definitely, yeah, it happened, guys. This is not normal anymore, okay? And, ooh, that's classic VRAM bottleneck scenario there. So... yeah, you should probably stick to high textures at least. So I'm gonna leave everything else on maximum settings and just gonna select the texture quality on high over here. Alright, so here we are again with high textures this time. Hopefully this stays smooth all of the time. VRAM allocation is still pretty high, but the RAM usage is a little bit lower than it was before. So it was 16 point something gigabytes previously, now it's about a gigabyte lower apparently, and it was right here, right, where we started seeing some frame time spikes, and oh, this still happens. So we're just gonna have to set it down to high preset, okay, and lower down a ton of different settings here. So even though the GPU itself had the power to run it on very high settings, it doesn't have the VRAM, unfortunately, and that ends up happening in extreme situations where a lot of VRAM is required. So here we are now on high settings. It still looks pretty nice, of course, like there's not that big of a difference between high and very high, but this time around we're not seeing those little spikes in the frame time graph anymore. Well, there's one of them there, but turning this corner and actually aiming at the peoples here, everything is absolutely fine, aside from a little spike that happened, but yeah, much more stable. The VRAM allocation is still really high though, but that RAM usage is definitely lower, which means that it actually swapped some things previously on high textures and very high settings everywhere else. So this is the way to play this game, absolutely buttery smoothly. Select the high preset, and now let's go back to this area, pretty intensive on the GPU. We started with 69 FPS previously, now it's closer to 100 frames per second on high settings. So obviously this is going to be buttery smooth 100% of the time. Again, unfortunately you can't really max it out because of VRAM, but hey, you're not really losing that much in terms of the visuals here. Next up is a gorgeous game from a few years ago that still looks amazing and doesn't have VRAM related issues. It's Red Dead Redemption 2 at 1080p ultra settings. The DLSS says ultra quality there because I went into the Nvidia app and enabled DLAA to replace the DLSS here, and it's also DLSS 4, and this makes the game look way better. It's the best anti-aliasing possible in Red Dead 2, and I made a couple of adjustments right here. The reflection MSAA is set to 2 times, not maxed out. Water physics is also set to 1 notch over there, and the tree tessellation is disabled. This gives us a really good visual fidelity, guys, and pretty good FPS at the same time at 1080p resolution. It looks glorious right now. Let's start counting our FPS, and I mean, it's such a night and day difference comparing DLAA in this game to TAA, which was the previous only available option, basically, aside from if you wanted to utilize like FSR. This changes the game, in my opinion. It makes everything look really sharp, and you do lose a little bit of performance comparing to TAA, you know, about 10 frames per second lower here, but it's so worth it, in my opinion. I think I'm a little bit lost, guys. This is not where I wanted to go, but at least we can see it drop from 70 FPS here. Okay, very dense forest areas. We'll drop it to 69 frames per second. Very nice. But we need to kill Bob. Where is that bastard? I think it's in this direction, maybe. Here we have... There's Bob! Okay, let's do this, Roach. Grab Bob and get out of here. Let's go. Sing for us, Bob. Sing! Going through bushes and everything. This is amazing. Very nice vocal cords right there, my friends. Bob is such a good singer, isn't he? Let's keep on going. Is he dead? Maybe. Nope. Nope. Still singing. Still singing. This is the old-time radio, my friends. You know, back then there weren't any cars, there weren't any radios. So you had Bob singing with a lasso. Beautiful, right? Anyway, 60-something FPS. It's dropping to like 65 minimums here in Strawberry Town, which is one of the most intensive towns in the game. Sometimes in Saint Denis at night, FPS tend to drop by a couple of more frames. Like, what the heck? Why did you do that, Roach? But yeah, that means that worst case scenario, it will drop to like 60, 61, 62 frames per second. And that is absolutely amazing of an experience in Red Dead Redemption 2. It does a good job, and it's with DLAA enabled as well. So can't complain in this one. Okay, so next up is Call of Duty Warzone, guys. And this is just the warm-up. Okay, let's just try to hit some people, so I don't seem too bad when I die instantly when I'm playing the game. Look at these textures, right? Yes, that's because even though we're playing at 1080p ultra settings, this is the ultra preset with NIS native just to sharpen the image, I had to set the texture resolution down to very low for it not to stutter. Even on low, it was having some little spikes from time to time. So, yeah. And I mean, in this case, it's probably something to do with game optimization and resource allocation rather than having 8 GB of VRAM, because other versions of this game, earlier seasons especially, did run fine on normal textures with an 8 GB GPU, but now, yeah, very low is the way if you want the smoothest experience ever. Obviously, most people playing this game will also play on low settings coupled with very low textures, so that's fine for visibility and competitive play. But yeah, if you want visual fidelity, ultra settings, you gotta deal with low resolution textures if you want a smooth experience, of course. And who doesn't want a smooth experience, right? Anyway, that aside, this is actually a really smooth experience. 133 FPS average feels amazing, of course. It's high refresh rate even on ultra settings. Oh, we can go here. Okay, all right. Can I snipe people from up here? This is what most people do in Call of Duty Warzone, right? They just stand still with the sniper rifle looking at things. Hello? This is boring, guys. Ooh, somebody died here. We're close to enemies. There's one there. Come on. No. No. God damn it. Oh, this is awful. This is awful. Okay, okay. I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm fine. finally got a kill, guys. Finally got a kill, but I'm out of, yes, the armor. Now, our first Unreal Engine 5 entry here in this video is S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2 at 1080p using the high settings preset with DLEA and no frame generation at the moment. And here we're getting close to 60 FPS, although a bit under it here in this settlement area, which is really intensive, by the way. And it has Bob as well. Where is he? There he is. Goodbye, Bob. There we go. Okay, so let's move on from here. Let's get out, please, without dying. Okay, let's heal ourselves as well. There we go. All good. The frame times are a bit unstable, but that's completely normal from a UE5 title, which this is, obviously, and it's not well optimized whatsoever. But yeah, it's alright, it's an okay experience like this, but I think things can improve quite a bit just by adding a little bit of frame generation in this game, because this is one of those games where the frame times are a bit inconsistent, but if you enable FG, they actually become a bit flatter, so let's do that. So here we go, frame generation is now enabled and we're getting 100 FPS instead of those 60 FPS that we were seeing before, or 70s. This is actually really decent in terms of the input lag. Surprisingly, it's better than I expected. This game doesn't feel that great even without frame generation in terms of input lag, but here enabling reflex and FG still makes it really playable in my opinion. Also, another plus of using frame generation over DLEA and not over like DLSS quality is that you still keep the sharp-ish visuals from DLEA here in this one. Yeah, it's smooth, it's stable, VRAM is enough in this one, no problems there, and we get 100 FPS with the frame generation enabled. It's a little bit of a shame though that it doesn't sustain 60 all of the time without FG's help, but still it's not the end of the world since it works quite well in this title. Now it's the super well optimized Forza Horizon 5 at 1080p using TAA and the extreme graphics settings, maxed out settings actually, aside from the textures over here which are set to ultra because of our 8 gigabytes of VRAM. Now that doesn't really matter too much at all actually because ultra textures or extreme textures look pretty much the same in this game and you're usually driving at high speeds, not paying attention or licking walls to see those textures, right? And here we can have really high FPS, as you can see 120 FPS at native 1080p. TAA is a bit blurry, but it's actually one of the best, if not the best implementation of the tech that I have seen so far. And here we go, look at that, we're going really fast, guys. We slowed down a little bit because we hit that ledge there, but yeah, 130s, looking back at it, 120s. All right, okay, no license plate loss, so we still have that GT710 for the win there. Okay, all right, well, we hit Bob's house over there. Come on, all right, we're arriving at the city almost. No more green grass, by the way. I don't like that too much. Everything is super brown right now because it's probably summer, I guess, or autumn. Probably summer. Okay, let's keep on going here, dropping down into the lower 100s inside of the big city area. Not bad whatsoever, but this is still not the most intensive thing that you can do in this game. That is going inside of this tunnel and actually getting out of this tunnel. So inside of the tunnel itself, 90s, and getting out of the tunnel, getting 86 frames per second. That's the absolute minimum. So basically this translates into a high refresh rate experience all of the time, and it's a gorgeous one at the same time, and it's nice. Okay, very smooth indeed. Next is the extremely intensive Alan Wake 2 at 1080p DLEA, no frame gen at the moment using the high settings preset. Not maxed out, a lot of things are still on medium as you can see. This is just the preset without ray tracing enabled either. And even with these settings, again, not maxed out, no ray tracing, it's not enough to achieve 60 frames per second. This saddens me a little bit because I thought it was going to get 60, 70 maybe with these settings. It's nothing special, right? Again, not maxed out, no ray tracing. Yet this is the best the 5060 can do. Yeah, it's not impressive whatsoever in Alan Wake 2, unfortunately, guys. Let's stop it there and let's try some upscaling first. So quality DLSS in this game actually works really well. This is the new Transformer version as well. It looks just a little bit blurrier than native resolution at 1080p. So that's very impressive since this is 720p resolution basically at the moment. Yet it looks so damn good. So this is a way you can play at 60 plus FPS all of the time without losing much in terms of visual fidelity, and I'd argue it's almost the same. Once again, if you're not seeing things side by side, you could say that this is actually native 1080p. So very impressive stuff from the LSS4 in this one. But what if you want to stay with the native resolution and maybe add a little bit of frame generation? Will that work properly, or will it be super input laggy? Let's find out. 2 times frame generation with DLSS. It might actually be running out of VRAM. I don't know. Probably not, actually. It was probably just applying. So right now I can't really count the FPS because 1% lows are going to be crap because of the new frame pacing. But it is very smooth in terms of just the smoothness of the game, obviously. And in input lag wise, you can still feel the input lag when turning the mouse around and so on, but it's not obnoxious whatsoever. It's still 100% playable, at least to me, and I'm very picky when it comes to the input lag in video games. So I'm fine with this experience. 2 times frame generation is also a decent way to utilize FG in this one instead of using like 4 times MFG, because with the baseline FPS that we were getting 50 to 60 most of the time with the LAA, it means that you're better off just using 2 times instead of 4 times, because 4 times will introduce a ton of artifacting and noise and just... yeah, it's going to be really noticeable, the imperfections in the image, whereas with 2 times FG, it's less noticeable, and it's still smooth anyways. No problems with the image, maybe around her hair over here in this section. You can see a little bit of ghosting, yep, and artifacting, but it's minor, especially compared to the 4 times stuff. If I use 4 times over here, you can see, yeah, the hair looks a bit worse. And there's also artifacting around the trees now. Basically, I'd prefer to utilize 2 times frame generation, even though right now we're seeing 180 FPS almost. It just makes the image quality a little bit more unstable this way. For 4 times frame generation, I really prefer to have like 60 or 70 plus FPS as a baseline before enabling MFG, and not 50 to 60. Now it's Battlefield 2042 at 1080p resolution using the ultra settings with no ray tracing or DLSS, so native 1080p here. It still looks a bit too soft because of that TAA implementation of this game. It's not really the best, but it's seeable, I guess. And the FPS are actually quite decent on the 5060 here. I still expected a little bit higher, honestly. But yeah, no complaints. It's going to be a higher refresh rate experience. It's super stable as well, doesn't stutter one bit, and it looks good overall. Yeah. Let's do these smoke effects right here, dropping us into the 90s and 80s at times, worst case scenario. But again, yeah, this is stable, it's smooth, it's playable. If you wanted to get like 20 more FPS average, you could play on high settings and get pretty much the same visual fidelity. So, no complaints in this one. However, I wish it was a little bit faster in here. Still a good performance boost over like the 4060, for example. Come on, my gosh. I'm really looking forward to the next Battlefield title, that's for sure. Okay, and it's over. Now it's one of my favorite games that has come out this year, Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 at 1080p using ultra settings with DLSS4 transformer model, native AA, so DLAA, and this is it. It's pretty intensive this way, but it looks beautiful, and there's virtually zero pop-in issues on ultra settings compared to high settings, so it's pretty stable experience here. You can enjoy the ultra graphics settings, which aren't the maximum, by the way. This still has the experience experimental settings above it, which are way too intensive. But yeah, this is something that you couldn't really do on an RTX 4060, the previous generation, because that would just get you like 50 FPS here, or 50 to 60 most of the time, and this is 60 to 70 or 60 to 75 most of the time. So a bit more stable, a bit more gorgeous, but you know, it's not like a huge generational leap. But once again, it's one of the bigger ones this generation at the very least. I just wish it had more VRAM, but it's the same talk every single time, right? Next is Doom: The Dark Ages at 1080p resolution using the LAA and the Ultra settings here, but the textured pool size is set to the minimum, because if you increase it a little bit, the VRAM goes over the limit. We don't want that. And here we go, guys, let's destroy them bastards. This is awesome, actually. This game is really smooth as well. You can see the frame time graph doesn't move whatsoever, and even with all of these effects, doesn't really drop too much, only into the mid 60s apparently, maybe low 60s here and there, but it is a pretty stable and very enjoyable experience. Now, you might want to play Doom with a high refresh rate though, because, well, it's a first-person shooter, it's very quick, very fast-paced, you know. Let's go, come on, goodbye, Bob! Tons of Bobs here in this level, I love it. For us to kill, obviously. Come on, goodbye, Bob, once again. Yes, sir, look at that. Beautiful, 60 FPS drop there. Okay, come on, let's kill this one. But even if it does drop a little bit, oh yes, it is dropping right now into the 50s, look at that, with these effects from the gun, very intensive stuff. You can always utilize some frame generation. Let's try it on 2 times, that will go slightly over the VRAM limit once again, but it should be fine, it's only a few megabytes. Let's see how it does. Oh yes. Alright, this game for some reason, maybe because it was made with frame generation in mind, it runs really well with it, and there's basically no input lag here. There is just a little bit of it. If I'm being very picky, I might be able to notice, but it still feels really responsive, even for a first-person shooter with frame generation, which I usually hate. And it still stays really stable above basically 100 FPS right now. Although the baseline was actually dropping from 60, as you saw. Alright, come on! There it is! Yeah, this is awesome, guys. I mean, it would be nicer if we could increase that texture pool size, obviously, but textures still look pretty decent. Pretty well optimized for a ray trace title, and the 5060 does drop just a little. Next up is GTA 5 Enhanced, but with the Natural Vision Enhanced mod at the same time. This is really intensive, guys. Let's go over the settings, and we're playing at 1080p resolution using the maximum settings, including ray tracing, the LAA right there, and the normal depth of field, because they don't recommend anything higher for the mod. And this way, the game looks absolutely fantastic. I really like the look of NVE in this one, with the ray tracing as well. It's very intensive, as you can see, but it's actually staying above 60 FPS for the most part. I already saw it dropping into the 50s whenever you are inside of buildings, you know. But whenever you are out and about, just playing the game, having a lot of fun, driving cars around, shooting people, exploding things, which is really intensive as well, but it doesn't drop from 60 FPS, because it doesn't really drop too much from what we're seeing right now. It's a good experience here, you know. Could it be better? Yes. Should it be better on a 5060 tier GPU? I think so. This graphics card should have been faster, but at least in this one it doesn't have VRAM related problems, so at least there's that. And by the way, if you're wondering about the performance of the game without the NVE mod, just add like 10 to 15 frames per second, and that's what you'd get with the GTA 5 Enhanced on maximum settings as well, but without the mod, which is, again, pretty intensive. Now, this is Jack's Hail over here. It gets 60s, 70s, a little bit better than the 4060 as well that I tried yesterday. That GPU was consistently dropping into the 50s, and 40s around here. Hello, Jack. How you going, buddy? Everything all right? Oh, yes. And this one is staying into the 70s, so a decent bump in performance there, at least compared to other 50 series GPUs and their predecessors, right? This still drops from 60 FPS, as you can see there, though. Bob, what are you doing? Trying to run away from me? Goodbye, Bob. But yeah, aside from a couple of drops here and there in intensive bushes and intensive interiors, it runs really well. Next is a really intensive title, Assassin's Creed Shadows at 1080p using DLAA, so 100% resolution scale, and the high settings preset with a ray tracing GI set to the maximum as well. This makes the game look really pretty in my opinion, and the RTX 5060 can actually handle it somewhat. If you're fine with 30 to 40 FPS, or like 40 plus in some other areas, it's okay of an experience, but this is not how I'd play this game. Instead, I would utilize some frame generation because that makes a big difference in this game, and the game was made with FG in mind, so enabling it even with these baseline FPS, which seem to be really low for frame gen. In this one, however, it works extremely well in terms of input lag, even with low FPS baseline. So let's enable that right away. Nvidia DLSS here. I would also use this instead of DLSS quality, because quality DLSS only gave us around like 10-15 more FPS, not that big of a deal, and it wasn't enough to improve things up into the 60s, you know, it was 50 most of the time. But yeah, over here, once again, input lag is noticeable, but for a third-person game like this, and for a game that was built from the ground up with that frame generation in mind, it's working absolutely great, guys. And now it's very smooth of an experience. VRAM is enough with these settings as well. Now, oh, Roach is actually here today. Last time around, I called Roach a bunch of times and he didn't show up. I don't know what he was doing. Anyway, around here, as you can see, dense forest area, only dropping to around the same values as we saw inside of the city. And yeah, it works really well. It doesn't run at a low resolution because of DLSS quality. It is still DLAA after all, and I'm completely fine with this. Look at how bad we gotta make the textures look in Horizon Forbidden West for it to not run out of VRAM on the 5060. A 5060. Oh boy, I mean, some textures do look nice, but some other textures... Right? Let's go over the settings here. I'm playing at 1080p resolution using DLAA and the medium textures with high settings preset everywhere else. So I first tried it on high textures and high preset, and I was getting 50 FPS with drops into the 40s sometimes, with 16 gigabytes of RAM usage. So that means that it swapped a lot of things into the RAM previously, and also the GPU was running at around 90 watts. Clear indication that it was running out of VRAM. Now with these settings, high with medium textures, it's flawless basically in terms of frame time graph. It doesn't stutter whatsoever. Power utilization is completely fine, so we're not running out of VRAM at this point, and it gets 70-ish frames per second. Usually, if you aren't running out of VRAM, increasing textures will only eat about like 2 FPS or 3 maybe maximum, but if you are running out of VRAM, we went from 50 to 60 plus all of the time. Right? It's a big difference. It's a shame, guys. It's a shame, but no, we gotta compromise because 8 gigs. Now it's the finals. I got it at 1080p using DLA 100% resolution scale with the transformer model and the dynamic epic RTX global illumination, as well as the epic settings. You saw it, right? Let's go. So the game is basically maxed out, and I really wanted to include the finals here because it's a UE5 title, but it runs so well, guys. I mean, like we got games like S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2, for example, running like crap. I mean, in general, you know, it has a lot of stuttering and instability issues, yet here we are playing the finals, a multiplayer shooter. Great graphics, by the way, with the epic settings or maxed out settings here with ray tracing as well. I usually don't use ray tracing in it because it's a multiplayer shooter, but you can use it with the 5060. It runs absolutely fine. Not as high refresh rate of an experience as I'd like it to be, but I mean, yeah, you can always drop the settings down to low if you want to play this competitively. Come on! Oh boy, I saw that rocket flying towards me. Oh boy, I'm fine still. We got one. Oh, I died with a grenade, I think. Yeah, that death was definitely a flashback from 2008, I think, with Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. Oh, good old days of Call of Duty, guys. I loved that game so much. And also this one, I mean, again, this is basically a flawless experience in UE5. You can max out everything at 1080p with a 5060 card, and it will run flawlessly. Also, this Kyoto map is the most intensive map in the game, so you'll get even higher FPS in other maps. Come on, there we go. Another couple of kills here. Hey, hello. Oh, he had a shotgun, bastard. But yeah, it runs pretty well, this one. Next up is Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. This game really likes VRAM. We're at 1080p resolution using the Supreme Settings preset, so everything is maxed out aside from these couple of settings here. Because it's the texture pool size and shadow quality, and they consume a lot of VRAM, which we don't have. Okay, DLAA is also being utilized. Thankfully, though, this game still looks really good with the low texture pool size enabled. And the major issue that I have with it is not really texture quality or even shadow quality right now. But the thing that annoys me the most in this one is the pop-in issue. Because you saw it right away when I started. Like, this area is super, super noticeable. Look at those bushes there. As you walk, the shadows just pop into view, or the objects just change forms, and it's really annoying. And there is a very good fix for it, and that's enabling path tracing, but we don't have path tracing here with this GPU because that's reserved for 12GB GPUs or more. Yep. No, but there is a better fix, in my opinion. You just type RLOD scale 5, press enter, and then it's fixed. We do lose quite a bit of FPS. We went from 100 FPS to 85, so a 15% drop in performance. But now you don't have any annoying pop-in issues. I mean, there's still a little bit sometimes here and there, but it looks so much better like this. It fixes those problems. It still doesn't stutter or whatever, and the performance is enough to enjoy this title. The Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion Remastered is next at 1080p using high settings with Lumen hardware ray tracing turned off. It still uses Lumen software ray tracing, which is on low right now. DLAA 50 to 60 FPS or 50 to 70 FPS is what you can expect most of the time in Oblivion Remastered. Thankfully, VRAM is enough for these settings. I tried enabling some ray tracing or hardware ray tracing actually on high, and it was a bit of a mess. It ran out of VRAM, but here, yeah, 7.6 gigabytes, what it's allocating at the moment, not too terrible. Stuttering issues wise, there is the frame time spike here and there, of course, because it's UE5, but they've actually made it much smoother since the game released. But let's get outside of this village here. Oh, and it started raining as well, and I think, yep, we actually ran out of VRAM now. Obviously, you can lower the graphics settings and the textures here, so it's not the end of the world, but a new GPU should never need these many compromises, in my opinion, especially a 60-tier GPU. Medium textures works fine, as you can see, back into the 60s, back into the power utilization that it should be doing or consuming, and back to a flatter frame time graph as well. But what a shame, dude. Because, you know, if we had like 12 gigabytes of VRAM, for example, we could have the texture set to high, looking a little bit better. We could enable, for example, frame generation on top of it and make it a really smooth experience. But now we gotta settle for medium textures. And I'm not even sure if it will run out of VRAM in just a little bit, because FG also consumes more VRAM. It's certainly stuttering quite a bit right now. Oh my. We're only getting like 60. Oh, yeah, it's starting to stutter quite a lot, guys. This game's broken as well, so let's move on. Okay, I can't quite believe what my eyes are seeing at the moment, guys. Black Myth Wukong is also a UE5 title, just like Oblivion. It also has Lumen enabled by default, yet it's only allocating 6 gigabytes of VRAM at the 1080p resolution using high settings. Over here, DLSS is being utilized, but it's at 100%, so it's DLAA. Frame gen is off. I don't know why it's in Chinese, okay, but it is turned off. And yeah, apparently aside from the usual spikes that you get from UE5, which is very awful, it doesn't have a problem, guys, because it actually isn't running out of VRAM, and it's above 60 FPS most of the time. Those traversal stutters are super annoying, because I've actually done the benchmark run once already, but they're still there. Anyway, UE5 shenanigans, my friends. Yeah, as you can see, most of the time, though, it's going to be a smooth experience. It's no insane performance, right? It's nothing really that impressive, but it works, and it's 1080p native high settings. So there's that. No path tracing, obviously. Should not utilize that, right? And if you wanted to make things smoother, frame generation is there, and we got some headroom there on the VRAM as well. So let's try it. And this is yes, I believe, or on. Oh, it's also 4 times frame generation that is enabled by default. Interesting. I usually like 2 times more with the kind of baseline FPS that this GPU provides at 1080p resolution, because that means less ghosting and less artifacting as well, and a little bit sharper of an image. But hey, I'm fine with this. In terms of input lag, it's really snappy actually still, since the FPS baseline were above 60, and it's getting 200-ish FPS sometimes, so no major artifacting is happening either. Yeah, this is fine, guys. It's a good experience in Black Myth Wukong, and I think I would actually enable frame generation in this one for that smoother result. And it seems like it gets rid of the little frame time spikes, the micro stutterings as well. So yeah, this is a little bit of a surprise after Oblivion. And it is conclusion time, my friends. I'll still have more games running right here as usual while we talk a little bit about the RTX 5060. Can I recommend this GPU? No, but let's go over its positives first. It is very power efficient, as you saw. You can play pretty much everything at 1080p resolution with decent frame rates, although with a lot of compromises to the textures because of those pesky 8GB. Anyway, you can play them, and it consumes very little power for the performance it gives. And it's also a very small GPU. I like it, actually. Sometimes being small is alright, my friends, and it can be a positive. Now, the price to performance is actually decent. I wish it was cheaper, of course, and I wish it had more VRAM, because that's very important. That's the reason why I can't recommend this GPU in 2025. I don't know what they're doing, honestly, with the 5060 over here. If it had 10 gigabytes, it would still be a rough sell, but I think 12 gigs is what this GPU deserved to be a good buy or a recommendation. As it stands, there are way too many compromises that you need to make to your games if you want to play AAA titles, of course, and I really don't like it. Not to mention that ray tracing consumes more VRAM, frame generation also consumes more VRAM, and I mean, it is an RTX GPU from latest generation, so those are advertised features on this card, and it still has 8 gigabytes. And if the only things that you needed to disable were like ray tracing, for example, I'd be okay with it, but it's textures. Texture quality is one of the most important things in games to make them look pretty. You can have some games running at like low settings with ultra textures and they'll still look good. But here it's the opposite thing. You have games running on ultra settings, and you have to set the textures down to low or medium, making them look like plastic. I hope that the next generation brings something great. The 6060 needs to at least have 12 gigabytes. And finally, just to see how ridiculous 8 gigabytes are in 2025, let's remember some old GPUs. GTX 1060 came out 8 years ago. Actually, no, 9 years ago. It's from 2016. And that had 6 gigabytes of VRAM. So in 9 years, we got 2 more gigabytes on the 60 tier card. Yeah, Doesn't sound very good, does it? But even worse, guys, the RX 480 had an 8GB model back in 2016 as well. It was the GTX 1060's competitor, and that GPU cost $229 in 2016. And it already had 8GB. So again, why do we still have 8GB GPUs in 2025, especially with games already on the market that can definitely saturate that amount of VRAM? It's insane. Anyway, I'll catch you in the next one very soon. As always, love you all. Bye-bye.